How's everybody doing today? I'm Joe, and today I'm here to start a special segment on my channel that I announced on my Facebook page and that I mentioned in my previous video for Fantastic Beasts. Today we're going to start off with Classic Movie Night. And since my good friend Rachel Wagner has done other segments on her channel like Family Movie Night, Monday Movies, or whatever the case is, I decided why not try it on my channel. I started earlier this year with 90s movie flashback, and I thought with this one, what better way to start off than with a classic, the first Rocky from 1976. Very recently was the 40th anniversary of the release of Rocky. This movie's 40 years old. Whoa. Oh, just you wait. Next year Star Wars will turn 40. And don't worry, we'll get to that movie eventually. The original. I think I might have come out and said it once or twice before in previous videos, but I really like the Rocky franchise. And while the other sequels kind of get more of the spotlight in comparison to the original, and Creed last year I thought was an excellent movie and probably the best one since the first movie. If you want to know my thoughts, you can go check out my review on my channel. But a lot of people I think seem to forget that the first movie really is something special. And while some of the sequels are really good and some are not so good, the first one really is the one that started it all, obviously. And I watched it last night for the first time in a few years. I hadn't watched it in a while. I forgot just how really quiet and simple this movie is in its execution. I don't really see how anyone could not have seen this by now, but if you haven't, there will be spoilers. You have been warned. Now, the first time I watched Rocky, I was about 13 years old. I was in middle school. My mom showed it to me, and I thought it was fine. I didn't mind it, but I was kind of one of those people that thought, where's the boxing? There's like 2 boxing scenes in the whole movie, one at the beginning, one at the end. What's all this stuff happening in here? But I started appreciating it a little more as I got older and started to see why people liked it. Watching it again last night, I think this is one of the greats. I don't really see how anyone else can top this as far as a boxing movie is concerned. You may come close, but this is probably the quintessential boxing movie. Now, I gave you a spoiler warning, but most of you who have seen this, you guys know what the plot of this movie is. Rocky Balboa is a club fighter. He's making money by working for a loan shark. He doesn't exactly have an exciting life. And he's given a shot to go up against the world heavyweight champion, Apollo Creed, on New Year's Day of 1976. But there's more to this movie than just that simple premise right there. It may not be a deeply complex story, but there's a lot of stuff you can take away from this movie. This is made by John G. Avildsen, and even though it came out in 1976, it feels very realistic from the dialogue, the acting, the setting, everything. Sylvester Stallone plays the iconic character Rocky Balboa. Not the smartest guy in the room, not exactly the sharpest either. He's a club fighter, he's working as a thug for a loan shark, and he goes to the pet store to talk with this girl Adrian almost every day. And he has a friend, Paulie, and he goes to a boxing gym run by Mick, who's played by Burgess Meredith. And his life, needless to say, is very unsatisfying. He may have some decent money, he may have a roof over his head, but he's longing for something better, which I think perfectly illustrates it in the scene where Rocky comes home, talks to himself in the mirror a little bit, and you don't really need to hear him say much else because the look in his face says it all. My life sucks. And he also doesn't really feel that much satisfaction from his work for a loan shark when he's supposed to break this guy's thumb, but he doesn't, because later on when he's given the opportunity to punch Paulie after an argument he has with him and his sister Adrian, Rocky's too nice of a human being. He's too nice of a guy, and unfortunately his boss gives him crap about it. Why didn't you do what I asked you? You're making me look bad, you're embarrassing me. And also in this other scene with this little girl, little Marie, she's hanging out with kind of a rough crowd over there, and Rocky takes her home one night trying to give her advice. You hang out with nice people, you get nice friends. You hang out with smart people, you get smart friends. You hang out with yo-yo people, you get yo-yo friends. And it leads to some interesting results.
Hey, Rocky.
Yo.
Screw you, creepo.
As he says to that same person in the 6th movie 30 years later. Great insults last a long time. With these scenes in here, you can see that Rocky is not a bad person. He's just someone who had the chance to become something better, but he never really took that opportunity. He made some not so great decisions, and he doesn't have an exciting life. But if there's anything that you can see about this guy, he's a good person. He has a good heart underneath, and he just wants to do right by everybody else. You don't see too many characters like this in movies these days. And another character that I really like is Adrian, who will later become his wife down the road, played by Talia Shire. Hopefully I said that right. She works at a pet shop that Rocky goes to just about every day, and he talks to her, tries to joke with her, and she's incredibly shy. And she's interested in Rocky, but she's too scared to even say anything to him. She just kind of looks at him and goes, yeah, that's fine. Good. Hey, Burrs, look at this. the giant worm. And I also like the little bond that Rocky has with his dog, Butkus or something or other. Reminds me of me and my dog. And then you also have Adrian's brother, Paulie, played by Burt Young. And this is a character that I have a really, really love-hate relationship with. He's one of those characters that you just kind of love to hate because of how mean he really is. But he's got some good in him somewhere underneath. But watching this movie last night, there were so many times where I said, Rocky, please punch this guy in the jaw. He needs to be taught a lesson. But like I said, with having some good underneath him, we see more of that in the sequels. But in this one, he wants his sister to go out and have a life because she clearly doesn't really do much. Just like Rocky doesn't have much of a life either. So on Thanksgiving night, she and Rocky go out on this date at the ice rink where they talk about how Rocky was taught how, since he didn't have much of a brain, he better start using his body. We learn that Adrian learned how to use her brain since she wasn't born with much of a body, as her mother said, apparently. And I think it's a really nice scene, and apparently this scene was shot with almost nobody there because it cost a lot less as opposed to having people being there while they shot the scene. And it doesn't really surprise me hearing that because other movies like Jaws and the original Star Wars, which were filmed in just about the same time loop of each other, there was all these kinds of limitations that were put on the productions and they were just working with what they had. And I think it worked out in their favor upon retrospect. And then later when they go back to Rocky's apartment, Adrian is finally able to come out of her shell. Their relationship blossoms into a romantic one. I buy the relationship, personally. I think they're one of the best romantic couples ever put to film. Hey, look at my face. Is this a face you can trust? You gotta put this face on a stamp. Come on inside. And then you also got Burgess Meredith's character, Mickey Goldmill, who would later become Rocky's trainer. Burgess Meredith is one heck of an actor, I gotta say, from what I've seen. He was in this other war movie that my dad told me about. I forget the name of it, but he's also famous for playing the Penguin in the Adam West Batman TV show. I think this is safe to say his signature role as far as his career goes. He's got that Clint Eastwood thing going on. He's always admonished Rocky for wasting his potential, as he says in this one scene, "'Cause you had the talent to become a good fighter, and instead of that, you became a thug or a cigarette loan shark. It's a living? It's a waste of life." But it also leads into a really good scene when Mick comes by Rocky's apartment to tell him, "Look, let me help train you. I didn't have any of that stuff when I was fighting. I don't want the same thing to happen to you like it happened to me." And Rocky, of course, is understandably upset with Mick. "I asked you for help a long time ago. You just brushed me off. Why are you coming to me now?" And as it turns out, Mick was too afraid to express his feelings because he's clearly not one of those guys who likes to express his feelings, at least not all the time. But Rocky eventually agrees to let Mick become his trainer anyway. And the next character, Apollo Creed, played by Carl Weathers. He's someone who, from what I've heard, is very much inspired by Muhammad Ali as far as his out-of-the-ring and in-the-ring persona, very prideful and all that kind of stuff. Pretty much shows in this one. I mean, I'm no boxing person. I've never really followed Muhammad Ali's career. But from what I've seen of Ali before he passed away, sadly, he definitely gave off those vibes. And Carl Weathers plays that very well here. And the character gets fleshed out more in the sequels, of course, like I said, with other characters. But for what this movie needed, I think he fits it perfectly. He's very much wrapped up in his own fame and all the success that he has as a boxer and never really has gone the distance before and is undefeated in every single fight that he's done. When another boxer that he's set to fight on the same day has to drop out because he hurt his hand, he starts looking for other people to fight, and he finds Rocky's name since he decides to go with an unknown and giving an unknown a shot at the title. Despite the concerns of his trainer Duke, he says, "Yeah, he's nothing, I'll just drop him in 3 rounds. And since he's so successful as a fighter and with his wealth and everything, he doesn't really seem to think that maybe I should take this a little seriously, which I think is perfectly illustrated in this scene here when his trainer Duke watches Rocky on TV punching the packs of meat in Paulie's place of work, and Duke can clearly see that, oh, he's not messing around. Now that I've talked about the characters, let's talk about the music, the training montages, and of course the boxing matches, which, let's face it, it's kind of what we want to see in a Rocky movie, as well as the good character stuff as well. But the boxing fights, that's just the icing on the cake that we all want to see. The music in here is composed by Bill Conti, and it's one of the most iconic scores ever put. From the opening scene when Rocky and this other fighter are fighting in the club, and also with some other things like dun 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 dun. But of course, this is probably the most iconic piece of music from the soundtrack that this franchise is given. And whenever I play that on my iPhone, my blood starts pumping. And seeing him go through the training from punching bags to push-ups, drinking those raw eggs in a cup, ugh, no thanks. And seeing him run up the steps of the Philadelphia Art Museum Institute, it's iconic. It speaks for itself, really. I mean, it's really awesome to see Rocky getting ready for this fight. You get so wrapped up in it and you want him to succeed. You're rooting for both Rocky and for Adrian as well, for them to have the best lives that they can. And also, since I mentioned the training montage, that set of steps that he goes up on and does that famous victory dance, obviously a lot of people have gone up those steps whenever they visit Philadelphia. I myself have gone up those steps too, and my mom and I took a couple pictures, which I can't really seem to find at this moment, but hopefully I'll publish them one day on my social media pages. But it was really cool going up those steps that day and seeing the footprints where he stood doing this and seeing the same statue that was shown in the third Rocky. I was kind of hoping that Sylvester Stallone would be nearby, but you don't always get what you want in life. Now, before we get to the boxing scenes, the one scene that I think really defines his character, Rocky, is when he goes to tour the boxing arena the night before the match, and then he comes home later that night and tells Adrian, "I don't think I'm gonna win." Why? Nobody's ever gone the distance with Apollo, but if I can go the distance with Creed, then I can prove to myself and everybody else that I'm not just some bum on the streets. And that's another reason why this character has resonated. He doesn't care if he wins or not. He doesn't care about wealth. He doesn't care about fame. He doesn't care about any of those things. He wants to prove to himself and to the rest of the world that he can give Creed a run for his money by going the full distance. 15 rounds. 15 rounds. Ooh. I gotta tell you, I have a huge amount of respect for people who become boxers or UFC fighters because they have a lot of courage going into the ring knowing that they are gonna get pounded. That is something that I could never do. Even though I did kind of want to be a boxer after seeing this movie for the first time, the older I got, the more I thought, no, this is not for me. But hey, if people out there want to become boxers, more power to you. And now, let's talk about the boxing scenes. There's only two, one at the opening and one at the ending. Both of them, I think, hold up really well as far as fighting, and I think they got a little better as they went along as far as choreography goes, but this I thought was a little more realistic. This one, Rocky Balboa, the sixth one, and as well as last year's Creed. The first fight is with Rocky against Spider Rico, and they're club fighters, and Rocky isn't exactly giving it his all. He seems to burn out a little bit. He's just kind of taking punches and everything. And in the Rocky universe, he's famous for that, with his cast iron jaw, taking all these punches. But then, this thing happens. Oh man, watching that last night, I cringed so hard. Yeah, that's gotta hurt. Ugh. And now for the climactic fight, it's pretty exciting. And it starts off a little bit crazy when Apollo comes in dressed as George Washington, throwing out dollar bills on this little boat that they made, and he dresses up as Uncle Sam. "I want you, chump, I want you." And it shows you he's not really taking this seriously. And then the fight starts, Apollo throws a couple punches, he's just taunting Rocky, but then Rocky knocks him right down in the first round for the first time that's ever happened to Apollo. And for the rest of the fight, he takes it more seriously, but he's obviously humiliated. So he just unloads everything onto Rocky. And then in the second round, Rocky comes back and clobbers him. And Apollo and everybody else seems to realize, okay, this guy's not messing around. And they go the full distance, and Rocky just continues to show as much resilience as he possibly can, and he gives Apollo one heck of a beating in the next to final round by punching him in the ribs. I can imagine that his trainer Duke was probably saying, I told you he meant business. And then the next round happens, and Rocky gives his last punch, everything, and except for the third one, the last punch he throws is with the left hand. And just a little trivia here, the guy who's ringing the bell throughout this fight, apparently that's Sylvester Stallone's dad in real life, Frank Stallone. So the fight ends, the announcer talks about the results, showing that Apollo wins by a split decision, and all the reporters are asking him, Rocky, how do you feel about this? And Rocky's yelling for Adrian, but he's also saying, look, I don't care what the results are. Again, shows you why he's a great character, doesn't care about any of those things. And this whole ending, I think, is just perfect. There's really nothing else I can say about it except for the fact that when I watched this with my sister when we were younger, I would go, Adrian! I drove her crazy when I did that, and she went, Joe, stop! By the way, to my sister, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. Nothing else I can say about it. It's perfect. Maybe there's some things in here and there that you could pick apart and nitpick, but this is one of the few movies that is perfect for me. I can't really think of anything wrong with the storytelling, the narrative, anything. I think this is definitely one of the greats for sure. If you haven't seen Rocky by now, why? In any case, what do you guys think of the first Rocky, and as well as some of the others? I might talk about those one day on this channel. I don't know when, but I think I will. Just let me think about it. What are your thoughts on the first Rocky movie? Do you love it? Think it's alright, or do you hate it? Which I don't really see how anybody could hate this movie. I mean, it's Rocky. Come on. You can't not like it. Whatever your thoughts are, comment below and tell me what you thought of it, and I'll see you guys next time in the ring.